Hi, and welcome to the Resources Roadhouse. I'm Wally Graham, and today I'm joined by Andrew Haythorpe, who's Executive Chairperson of Allup Silica. Now, Andrew, the tale is obviously in the title, Silica Sands. You're an aspiring ASX listing company. You haven't quite reached the boards as yet, but that's not far to come, I'd assume. But you've got four projects dotted around Western Australia, 4 silica sands projects. Could you just just give us a rundown of the projects, where they are, what stage they're at, etc.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wally, and ladies and gentlemen, great to be here with you today. Wally, as you mentioned, silica is our focus, and Allup Silica has specifically targeted projects, purity and ports. And in fact, at this point in time, we have 4 projects where we're looking for very high purity silica sand and reasonable access or reasonable distance to 4 ports, all here in Western Australia.
Okay, so the idea that you're close to port, that's an important aspect, of course, for any project.
Absolutely. Bulk commodities, whether it's iron ore, coal, or in our case, high purity silica. Having the deposit, having the project, of course, is critical. Having the purity, of course, is critical. And then, of course, you need to be able to ship it to customers, reach export markets. And that's really the platform of our business plan moving forwards. Is we've spent the last 2 years building the company and its portfolio of projects, specifically with a view to reducing the risk for investors. And we're all investors in our own company. And of course, giving us the best and quickest pathway through to production.
All right, so you've got two of the projects looking at going out through the Port of Bunbury. Let's start on those. Can you just tell us what they are?
Well, we've got, as you mentioned, down in the southwest area, as we call it, we have 2 project areas. One's Unicup and the other's Antwalker. And we actually have potential access to 2 ports there. One's Bunbury and the other one's Albany. And both of those ports can handle 50-odd thousand tonne capacity ships. And, between different windows of opportunity, there's potentially a capacity available there for a company like ourselves to get started and get our foot in the business game. So Antwalker and Unicup is the starting point where we first began almost 2 years ago now in picking up ground. And Unicup is the most advanced of those 2. And I've actually just walked out of a meeting with one of our advisors here in terms of the DCBA process for Antwalker. So both of those projects, they're sort of literally ranked 1 and 2 by virtue of time and the amount of time that we've spent working on them.
All right, and still down that southwest corner, you've got another project near Esperance.
And so Esperance, that's the newest project that we've picked up, and very encouraging indications of a very large sand mass near Esperance Port. So we only really picked that up late last year. So it's early days for us, but so far we've been very encouraged by what we've seen.
All right, and of course the final one, a WA company wouldn't be a WA company without something up north. So you're up closer. You're further up north.
Very much so. And the 4th project that you've mentioned is up literally near Windom, in that far northwestern corner of West Australia. And again, part of the 2 key sort of attractions there is one, somewhat to our surprise, we think we've identified, again, a large sand mass of potentially very high purity silica, and our initial grab samplings confirm that. And of course, the beauty for us, especially one of the attractions is, Windom Port, plenty of capacity and opportunity there. It's definitely not a crowded port or a busy port by West Australian standards. So that's literally being lined up for work to really kick off April, May, which hopefully that'll fit in quite nicely following our IPO and listing on the ASX.
All right, so silica sand, the obvious question, why silica sand? What attracted you to that particular commodity?
Well, we first started looking at silica sand about 3 or 4 years ago. And I must say, to my surprise, from a geologist background, silica sand itself is easy to find. However, finding high purity silica sand is actually quite difficult to find. And then even more difficult to find is high purity silica sand where you have a reasonable chance of land access and a reasonable chance of getting some port access for export. So you sort of move from this process, initial glance is it's all over the place, so to speak, but then the high purity is actually quite special. And then the high purity near a port really narrows that window down. So the first thing, I guess, was just the scarcity of high purity silica that is potentially accessible. On the other side of the equation, of course, is demand. Well, okay, you found something, that's great. You've got port access, potentially, that's great. So what? Well, the so what to that is it would seem that the silica sand industry is going through a transitional phase where traditionally it's been sand local, low value, supplying local manufacturers and local users of sand. But the transition that seems to be happening now is, and we've certainly had a number of inquiries, even at this very early stage in our life, from overseas consumers who need silica sand supply to keep their windows and glass manufacturing businesses going. So for those familiar with history, we saw a similar sort of thing in the 1950s happen with iron ore, where there was no real seaborne trade in iron ore prior to 1960, but after 15 years of demand growth and reconstruction of the world post-World War II, the first iron ore went on a ship from a boat from the Hammersley up to Japan, and that was the beginning of what is now the iron ore phenomenon. And of course, that industry has grown to be fantastic in all measures and accounts. So we sort of think that silica sand is almost following in the footsteps many decades later that iron ore pioneered back in the 60s.
And you probably, and thinking about it, WA silica sand, it says higher quality, let's equate it to the iron ore, the WA iron ore. There's that same sort of quality in the product.
Absolutely. Well, iron ore really kicked off on about 66% iron and, 0.05% or whatever phosphate, like, very low phosphorus, high purity iron. And that was the Mount Tom Price and Hammersley, of course, and those companies and dynasties have been built on those sort of deposits with that high purity with low impurities. So yeah, again, a very close analogy. Silica sand seems to be following the same sort of historical pattern.
All right, so you did allude just before to the future listing of the company. Is there any idea of when that may be happening?
Well, the idea is we push the button on Monday, Wally, and get out there and start capital raising sort of next week. And then, of course, once you've done the raising, then of course you tell the ASX that good news is we think we've satisfied the requirements, and off we go to listing committee, and then we debut.
All right, so it's a bit of a wait and see, but I'm sure that all the listeners and all the viewers and readers here at the Resources Roadhouse will be able to follow Allup Silica.
Wally, thanks very much, and hopefully it's a very small wait and see.
Yes, yeah. Well, let's hope it's not as it's not a very long wait till we talk about it again.
Totally right. Thanks, Wally.
Thanks, Andrew.